Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. And the question is, as a business owner, how does discipline and just doing the work build that business that's going to last forever or last for a long time? We hear stories of business failure all the time, but what is missing? What's the missing ingredients for why those businesses do not succeed, yet other businesses are thriving in this environment? So we're going to look into that today. So one of the questions we're going to answer is, what does it take to build a business that really lasts? And we're going to look at some concepts that are going to help us explore some ways to grow, such as how you can use vertical integration to transform your business, why your mindset matters more than the startup capital that you start with. And we're going to look and explore some structure, consistency, some techniques to help you be more disciplined and create more freedom in your business. As always, we've brought in the expert to help you answer those questions, and delighted today to have Lance Cayko with us. Lance is a serial entrepreneur and a co-founder of F9 Productions, Inc., which is a top-tier design and build firm in Longmont, Colorado. Now, also, Lance is the host of the Inside the Firm podcast, and the origins of that podcast really align with me. Lance has built a very successful business, got past that 7-year hurdle in his business and decided, hey, we've learned some great stuff. Let's share that with other business owners and help them grow a great business. So buckle up. You're in for an exciting journey, and we've got some great content to cover with Lance. So welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Paul.
Look, it's a delight to interview somebody that shares a common passion for helping business owners, and it's something that really gets me excited. And I can tell that that's what drives you as well. Look, you've grown your business. We talked about F9 Productions, and you've grew that from a 2-person startup into an award-winning firm with some recognition by BizWest and Best of the Mile Awards. You're also now a lecturer at the University of Colorado Boulder, and the host of the podcast Inside the Firm. So 700 plus episodes. Obviously, you've got a good message to share, and we're delighted to have you here with us today.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think it's a great conversation. I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. Look, I guess the first question is, there are a lot of things that we can do to create a long-lasting business. And I'm sort of going, I know we talked about what we're going to cover today, but I'm going to flip that a little bit because I actually want to see, one of the questions that we talked about was startup capital. A lot of people think they need startup capital to get started in business and grow, but you've come from a different perspective where you're talking about the mindset that you have is way more important. So I think a lot of people are thinking, if I can just get the startup capital, I'm going to be successful. Yeah. That's not really the case, because I can give you a gift of $100,000, but if you don't use that wisely, it's of no benefit. So you've grown your business so successfully. What was the key ingredient for you?
Well, discipline equals freedom. I like that Cayko quote, and that's kind of a driving factor in everything that we do. Is we try to be very disciplined, but that sometimes that it confuses people when they ask me, the moniker. They go serial entrepreneur, and I tell them all the things we do. F9 is the architecture firm. F14 is the construction firm. F12 is the real estate development firm. Then the podcast, and the lecturing, then the professional fishing. All of the, and then even the nonprofit, and all of it, still raising a family and doing all of that. And what it really comes down, and they say, well, how do you manage all that? And I go, I schedule everything. And then they go, oh my gosh, doesn't that just seems so anal? How do you even have time to do everything? And I go, well, that's exactly it, is because I'm very precise with my time and what I allocate things for and to do. But that takes discipline, and you have to do it almost every single day, like religiously. And it starts with my morning routine. And this is where sort of the golden hours come in for me. So when I was, I'm 42, but when I was 21, I had my first child, and I was actually going into architecture school. And I was kind of crapping my pants going, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And now I'm going to have to for sure have another job and, still go through architecture school, which requires a lot of studio time. You've heard the old adage about 10,000 hours, and it's really real in architecture school. You live in the studio, you become a studio rat. And my son, who was born, sort of forced me just by me having him to become a morning person. So I was always that person that showed up to studio before everybody else, 5 or 6 a.m. and then, go throughout the day, go home, eat some supper, hang out for a little bit, go back to the studio. But the morning became really special for me because that's when I realized my mind was the most fresh and secure and free for me to start tackling things and getting ahead of the world. And so the golden hours is like a metaphor. It's sort of where people make the gold happen, but also that resetting your circadian rhythm and letting the sunshine come in. What that's morphed to now is every day I wake up at about 4 or 5 still. I try to go to bed at 9 or 10 and get as much sleep as I can that I need to. But I have a very strict routine in the morning too. I get up, big glass of water, try to rehydrate, start grinding the coffee, put the coffee on. Then I go down and sit on the floor and stretch out, get some blood flow going while the coffee's getting made. And then I do a meditation. What I used to do was I used to do a pure meditation using an app up on my iPhone. But now it's turned into I pray the rosary every day. Time I'm done praying the rosary, then the coffee's done being made, and it's about 5:30 or 6. And then those 2 hours are all by myself in the most quiet time that I usually get throughout the day. And I look at my schedule, and then this is where the schedule comes in, and I see if I have to move anything or if I need to precisely move things around. Like I'm actually my own personal assistant because I know myself and how I can get to and from places on time. Like today, for example, I had a meeting at 7:30 way down in the South Metro of Denver. Then I had to jump over to our Denver office, do 2 podcasts, get to the car dealership to go get my tires changed. I'm working mobily. I wrote some proposals. Now I'm back at the office doing this podcast with you. We're doing a bunch of stuff in between then. But the other thing too is usually my emails will go out to the world in that 2 hours, setting the tone for everybody. And I'm not letting the world pull me around. I'm pulling the world in that regard. So that's where, and Jeff Bezos even was on an interview, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And they asked him about his routine. And it sounded very similar in that he said he's making most of his executive decisions before 10 a.m. because he knows himself. And then that's when his brain and his mentality is clear enough to be able to set forth the pace and the cadence and everything like that. So I even schedule like fishing trips with the buddies, dates with my wife, all kinds of stuff like that, time with the kids. And it keeps me able to do all of those things. I understand that some people might feel constricted by that, but that's like just a fundamental thing of if you're going to be an entrepreneur, not letting the outside world pull you around. You really have to pull it around and manifest your destiny every day.
Yeah. I think a lot of people running a business will claim that they are too busy to take on new things or too busy, they can't fit everything in. And now you mentioned, I think, the idea of the push and pull around your schedule, that you've got control of it. I think so many business owners operate in a responsive way to what is happening around them. They are not in control. They are not, and as you mentioned, they are not setting the tone for their day. They are not setting the agenda. They're letting everybody else tell them what to do. And it's no wonder that you're feeling stressed and confused without time, but setting that tone is really important. You are in control. And I think that is absolutely key. How did you get to that way? Because I think you mentioned, children. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners will say that children are the reason they don't have control. But you've put in a system where, because of it started with your children, you have control, or you create control.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those entrepreneurs that brings the children to meetings, and it's okay. And it maybe it's my business is a good example of when you can do that, right? Like it's an architecture business, it's a construction business. I mean, I've read a couple books that reference Donald Trump, and that he would bring the Trump kids to job sites and that influenced them. And I always thought why not? That's a good idea. Like I would want them. I brought my children to lectures and they've sat in on it when I go teach at CU Boulder and those sort of things. So there's a phrase I think we've heard in the last 20 years that I'm trying to reject in the business world. And I'm trying to put it in the ether by being on shows like this. And hopefully it catches on and people buy into it, because I think it's a better way of thinking about it. We've heard work-life balance. And every time I hear work-life balance, I cringe because I go, oh, I'm a very visual person. Most of us are, but especially as an architect, the vision that pops up in my head when I hear work-life balance is a scale comes into my brain. And I go, well, what am I trading? That's like a trade. That's a trade-off. And I like to think of it more of like, why can't you have a work-life harmony? Why can't you have a work-life harmony? A good example of that was like in between my meetings coming from the car dealership back up to where I worked, found a little place to work and everything mobily, up to the Longmont office, was I stopped at both community gardens that I run and checked on the water, checked on the plots just to see. It took me only 15 minutes, but that was scheduled, it was timed, and didn't interfere with my day. It's stuff like that, I think, that goes a long, long way. And what has really helped is give me a better high EQ for people, because in our industry, we're working for a lot of families. There's a lot of husband and wives duos, and they go, oh, I'm sorry about my child, or can I bring my child? Oh, yes, absolutely. We understand. You have children. It's okay. We used to have like coloring books for them. Sometimes I'll bring, like the table I'm sitting on right now, we have these markers and you can draw on the glass table, keeps them busy. It's okay. We actually kind of want the kids' input in some regards for that. So that's how I've always done it. I just never really tried to separate the two entirely. I think some kind of integration has to happen if you're going to try to juggle all the balls and be a fulfilled person, both personally and professionally.
I think, you touched on that idea of the scale, that when you're doing one thing, the other one has to give. And I think that comes from what we call a scarcity approach, that we've got limited resources, but we can certainly create more. And it's not a case of if we increase one, then the other one has to reduce. Sometimes, as you indicated, by bringing the children into understanding what you do and seeing what you do, you've created more capacity, more abundance there. And at the same time, and this is, I'm just starting to learn myself, your children actually see what you do and value what you do more, because they can see how you're explaining, how you're servicing, how you're creating value for other people, but how you're creating a solution for other people. And then when you are focused on work, they're a lot more understanding of the fact, well, hang on, Dad needs to go and do that time now. And once he's finished with that, well, then he's going to give me his full attention because he's already planned to do it that way. And it's taken me a long time. I've got 4 children. I'm over 50, still learning that and still adjusting and thinking, oh, there's a better way of doing that. And maybe if the kids actually saw what I did more, it'd be a lot easier. I know I probably wouldn't feel at times as an entrepreneur, I've often felt guilty about not being with the kids when they need me. And on the other side, not being in the office with my team, thinking they need me because I'm actually investing in my children at the same time. So I think I love that approach of looking at it as harmony, not balance, because I think balance, we're just going to be unstable. There's so many unstable business owners around.
Yeah. I liked where you went there at the end for sure, about if they can see what you're doing and how you're doing it, and they can see when your time has to be focused in different ways. Because I like that, because I've always really tried to set the tone with them too, as I go, hey, we're able to do the cool, fun trips to Brazil and Mexico, and that a lot of families, can't afford because what your dad does. So if you can be flexible for me, then look how Dad can be flexible for you. Like, these are earned privileges, so we have to understand when the lanes cross and when they don't, and everything like that. And then it's a healthy environment, because it's like, if you have a CEO dad who he wakes up at 5, scarfs down to breakfast, he's gone all day, and you don't know what he does, but you still have these privileges that are earned behind the doors of it, I don't think you have as much of an understanding. So it even increases their EQ, I think.
Yeah. I'm really learning that now. My oldest son works part-time in our business now. So he sees a lot more of what I do on a day-to-day basis. He's also involved in redesigning all our systems and processes. So he's getting a very good understanding of what we do and why we do it and where we can improve. So he's invested in it because he knows that the better we do our job here, the more freedom we create for not just our business, but for our family.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, my son was working for us part-time for a while. He's now finally going to go off on his own. I think he's got enough of dad. I did the same thing. I tried to work with my dad. I only lasted a week, so God bless my son. He lasted a lot longer than that. And that's what kind of fueled my entrepreneurship career, was after just not wanting to be working with dad. But when he was here just by proxy, and he would be down in the shop, literally right behind me, listening to really difficult conversations I was having with like owners, developers who are hypomanics like myself, and we're risk takers. And there's a lot of difficult stuff. Like I remember one was in recently, and he was, I think he was over exaggerating. He was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with the money, and I'm going to get a divorce. And I'm like, oh my, I calmed him down, and everything is fine. He's not getting a divorce. They just got back from a great vacation. But my son came over for dinner that night, and he goes, oh my gosh, like, I didn't realize you have a hard job. I go, yeah, it's a hard job. Like, there's a lot of emotion. It's not just money and pounding nails or drawing cool things. It's like a real tough job, buddy. So I hope you realize, like, I can shut it off when I come home. And one of my best friends, Bill, he does all my camera work and editing for the fishing channel. And about 2 years, he worked for us for like a full year. And one of the best things I've ever heard from anybody is the compliment he's giving me routinely now. Is he goes, I just really appreciate how you can just shut it off. He goes, like, 5 p.m. comes around and like, you're not mad about the window I broke, and we're friends again. And that's really difficult to do. So it's the same sort of thing with your families. You got to figure that out. You're basically challenging yourself so much more than the average person when you become an entrepreneur. Like, you have to understand the challenge that you're up against. It's a very, very high stress environment, starting a business, growing a business, making it flourish. But you really can't let that flow into your personal life to where it becomes detrimental, and vice versa. It's this you have to become a very emotionally mature person.
I think one of the things you've just mentioned there is that ability to separate the business from personal time. And one of the, I guess, the harsh realities I see when I interview a lot of business owners is they're not able to make that shut off between business and personal. And it's a cause of stress. It's a cause of anxiety, frustration, and issues in the families because they're not able. We talk about people bringing their work home, and I guess it's bringing the emotions from work home and letting that control the home. It's a skill that I guess we're not taught in schools.
No.
We're not taught in universities. We're not taught in business schools. It's something I guess we're told we just learn it on the job, but I think there are better ways to do that.
Yeah. And I think this is the beautiful thing about podcasting. I think we finally have a medium in this world that we haven't had previous to 20 years ago. Podcasting's been around for about 20 years now. Apple had a big announcement, so it's kind of true. And it's like, man, we sort of have a self-made university where we can go out and have conversations and listen to conversations like this. And that's exactly why we started our show too, is like, we were like, nobody's teaching architects how to run businesses. You take two credit courses in your graduate year or years, depending on the school you go to. And those are the professional practice. And it's mostly about contracts. It has nothing to do with figuring out EQ and having a high emotional intelligence with clients, understanding like anything can go wrong, how to hold the calm, how to not blame people, how to take responsibility, how to soothe things over, how to have a work-life harmony, all of those sort of things. So and I'm an eternal optimist. And I think that's another big thing you have to be too as an entrepreneur, is like, part of the discipline is just being eternally optimistic, which is, for me at 42, it was finally only about 2 years ago when I started doing a lot of guesting on shows that I'd been describing the law. I've been describing the law of polarity, but I had no idea what it was. I couldn't put a name or a figure to what I was experiencing over and over and over again in my life. And finally, one gal said, "Oh, you're describing the law of polarity." And what I was describing every time to her and other people was, I said, you're going to have your real bad days. as an entrepreneur or just a person. And I said, the really strange thing about that is that every time after that day happens, it's like the next day is like the best day. It's like an unexpected best day. So having that mindset is so huge, because the way it works is like you can't have, and the analogy I like to make is you can't have electricity without negative and positive charges. You have to have both. It's just, this is literally a law of the universe, because my children were asking me, oh, again, about the same sort of time that I came up with this phrase that has existed for a long time. Is we were sitting down for dinner and they go, well, hey, Dad, does anything make you scared? Like, you seem kind of fearless. And I go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Something makes me scared. And they go, what? I go, when everything is going right. And they're like, what? And I go, yeah, because I feel like the rug is going to get pulled. And it usually does happen that way, where it's like it's going too well. And I go, do you know when I don't get scared? And they go, when something really bad happens to me. And they're like, that's insane. And I go, no, I'm serious, because the universe, God, has taught me enough times to just withstand it and keep a positive mindset during that negative thing that's happening, whether it's a potential lawsuit, money problems, staff quitting or having to lay them off, all kinds of crazy problems that happen on the construction sites. We're building these static buildings in a dynamic environment. And I go, I actually really look forward to the bad stuff. That is a very hard thing to master. But if you can do that, I think it's so important. And one of the books that really helped me do that was, I read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And now I try to read it every single year, just to remind me of like what Stoicism actually is. And that's pretty much what it is.
There's some, I think one of the key things that came out there is how when you're looking at those bad things, and we hear so many prophets of doom that everything is going to go wrong. I hear this quite regularly from certain business owners, that every time there's a bad day or a bad phone call, the world's going to fall apart. But what you've described is, okay, those negative things that are happening to me, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to fix a problem, make somebody's day better by creating a solution. Or maybe that problem highlights that there's another opportunity where I can grow, and not just grow myself, but I could also grow my business by, hey, that issue is coming up as causing us problems. There's no solution. Let's create one and create that opportunity ourselves. So instead of looking at it as a bad day, look at it as an opportunity to create a better outcome, more opportunity, and grow with it.
Yeah, you got to look at it as a whole, right? Because you're really focused on only one half of the whole thing, and that's the problem. It's okay. You're human. We're all human. We're not infallible. So that's sort of been my big polishing moment, I think, is when I finally felt like I became an adult. Like, I actually don't like when grown people say like whenever I grow up, it's like, come on. At some point, you're gonna like. I felt like I finally did it around the age of 40, where I just had that mindset. For me, that was one of the biggest growth patterns in my life, was doing that. Yeah. So if people come away from this podcast and then maybe that's the one thing they get, I hope it would resonate with them, because it's true. It's a law of physics, and it plays into our everyday lives.
Absolutely. Now, you've already shared some golden nuggets with us. You've shared the law of polarity. You've shared about how your structure and discipline helps you grow. Now, right at the beginning, we talked about, and we may have talked about it very quickly, but you've got F9 Productions, you've got F14, which is a construction company.
Yep.
And you mentioned 3 or 4 other operations as well. Most business owners are struggling with the time and the focus to manage one. How have you managed to grow so many entrepreneurial businesses, and yet, when I'm talking to you, you're very calm, you're very relaxed, you're very focused. How do you do it?
Yeah. Systems are pretty much everything, I think. When I describe systems to people, they often also shriek at that too, because they feel like it's a constrainer or anything like that. And I go, no. Well, do you like the word framework better? Like, is framework better for you? And they go, yeah, maybe. Because I'm like, exactly. Like, I used to be kind of a radical political figure here in Colorado, and I used to think that, like, man, maybe we could exist with no government. maybe it would be better because I'm just so sick of the taxes and all the corruption and everything else. But you need a government. So you need a framework because that allows people to then understand how they can maneuver within it and how they can move and how they can be successful. So there has to be like a baseline for that. So what we did is the first framework that we built, I think that really helped us set a base for the architecture company, because that was the original company, was Alex and I use this piece of software called Revit Architecture. And that's what we draw and model and everything with, and produces our drawings. And we got to the point where we actually finally got enough work to where we go, oh, we need to hire somebody. And we were like, oh, well, we should just hire locally over at the University of Colorado Boulder, right down the street. And we started looking at candidates and interviewed them, and they just didn't know the software like we needed them. We kind of need to be like turnkey as much as possible. Yes, we're going to give them a lot of training. Knowing the software is just one fundamental piece of the pie, right? As an employee, but they didn't. And when we went to school, the problem with teaching that software is, like, out of our professors, they would read it out of a book written by the software engineer, not by an architect. So what we did is we said, well, we reached out to the university and we said, you guys don't have, I'm sorry, like, we want to hire your folks, but they just aren't there yet. Could we teach this software to your students? Knowing that, like, the reciprocity would be, oh, we can be close to students and find the best ones and then hire them and all of that. Well, it forced us to make a course. And we were like, let's just reject this software engineer style teaching. And why don't we teach the software as architects? So we came up with a course, Revit Rocketship. It's revitrocketship.com. It's taught thousands of people around the world, this piece of software. And one big negative thing that we had happen is, so we hired some people and they would take the course. There was one gentleman that we hired who was older than us by about 15 years. He was our second big hire. And I'm glad we made this mistake. The mistake was we taught him, or we just assumed that he's 15 years older. He knows the software. We don't need to have him go through the course. Disaster. All the drawings were wrong. The modeling was wrong. All of that stuff. And I'm so glad that was our sort of negative part of the law of polarity. And then the positive was, the lesson was, it was like, no, everybody who comes into the firm has to learn just exactly through our online course how to do this software. So we're all on the same page. That way, if somebody quits, somebody leaves, somebody's sick, they can just pick up the model and pick up the work from where the other person left off. That has been huge for us, just setting the tone and the pace in that kind of a way. And then there's been systems and more systems on top of that. We have F9, we expanded on that probably about 7 or 8 years ago and made 9 principles based on it. They were sort of unwritten before that, but once they were written, then everybody started following them. And one of the biggest ones was communication. We got hired so many times as architects after a client had fired their previous architect, and we go, why did you pick us? And they go, because you guys picked up the phone. And we're like, it's that simple? And they said, yes, it was that simple. Actually, you responded to the email, you picked up the phone, you responded to the text, whatever. So that's one of our biggest principles of the F9 is F4. Communicate. Staff is trained and they have to agree to these principles that if somebody gets in touch with them professionally at the firm, they have to get back with that person within 1 hour. And at the most 24 hours. But it's in between the 1 hour and the 24 is the 1 hour can be as simple as, hey, got your email. I got to look into this deeper. I'll get back to you tomorrow. That has went so far with everybody else. And then there's also the fundamentals about just like accounting. We've always been pretty good at keeping our books straight, which I have found is over and over and over again a fundamental problem. Alex's mom, when we first started the firm, gave us probably some of the best advice too. And we said, yep, we're going to listen to mom. Mom's right about this. She goes, set up a corporate account. Figure out the least amount to pay yourself to survive because you're a startup, and do that every 2 weeks. And that was huge. I tried to explain this to my wife many, many times, who was a realtor, that she would struggle to get these loans. And I would go, it's because you're not a W-2. Like, the bankers are not creative people. They need to check the boxes. And if you would have done what we were doing all the way fundamentally along, you could have checked the box. yes, you own your own company, but they see the steady paycheck coming in. And that really helped us once we started doing our first build projects, which was the tiny house. And then ultimately when we took out a $3 million loan to do our first real estate development, we had all of that backlog of W-2 wages. So we were the best of both worlds. We were successful business people with good K1s and everything like that, dividends. But then we had the base of the salaries. So all of those are probably the most fundamental things I think that have been successful for us to be able to not horizontally, but then vertically integrate.
So you've just got the accountant in me very excited there. A couple of key things. That structure, getting the right structure to start with. It's a conversation that I have with a lot of people where they haven't set up the right structure, and it has had implications in terms of financing, taxation, growth, risk, accounting systems, and regular reporting, paying yourself. Lots of key aspects there. Now, we've touched on it a few times. You've grown the business and you've added on different aspects to it. Now, one of the traps I see when a lot of business owners grow and want to introduce new revenue is they'll introduce something that I guess is not aligned with what their core strengths are or their core business. And they go and introduce, so it might be, I'm doing retail, so I'll introduce some more retail products which are not aligned. But you've described the architecture business, the training course developed for architects, which you've then sold to other architectural firms and the university, the building of projects and development work, and they're all, to coin a phrase, vertically aligned. They're all within that same industry, that same skill set, but you've built on those. How has that helped to grow, and what's some of the, I guess, the efficiencies you've got from staying within that vertical?
It's definitely, we've created our own ecosystem, which is sustainable. That's the most terse way I could explain that, for sure. Because sometimes what has happened most recently is, let's say architectural billings are down, but we have 4 or 5 building projects that we're doing with the other firm, F14. Our architects could then step in and they can do construction administration, and we start to bill from F9 to F14, and the cash keeps flowing. It doesn't just stop. Because that's one of the things we try to tell other architects too, is we go, look, a lot of architects complain about not making money. I understand that. And for everybody who doesn't know, most architects charge between 5 and 10% of a typical construction budget. Builders, especially in Colorado, 20 to 30%. That is a vastly different number than the architecture side of things. We preach all the time, and we made another course too, Architect's Guide 2, to try to teach architects how to make that leap, even though they maybe are afraid to become builders. Who, as we go, hey, look, do you want to extend the cash flow? And they say, well, yeah, of course. And I go, because you're done with the design, right? Well, why don't you flip that project into a building project? Like, you know how the building goes together. You already drew it. You probably, and we're trying to demystify the process to them. Like, you're just managing people for the most part. Like, you will learn, if you hire the right subs, you will learn along the way, because those subs are highly specialized in what they do. They know exactly the kind of nailing patterns per the drawings that you and the structural engineer did, all of that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, and then we tell them, if you want to make the ultimate leap, if you put on all 3 hats, architect, builder, developer, some developers can make up to like 100% profit on what they're doing. And so that's how it can be this kind of beautiful ecosystem. The challenge, one of the most recent challenges is this, though. And I just spoke with another person I had on my show about this. I was explaining this problem. And the problem is, I go, why does it seem like the white collar community, architects, engineers, they can answer questions in a very binary way? Yes, no. And maybe they'll follow the yes or no with, yes, we can do that because of this, or no, we can't do that because of this. I go, why do the blue collars? It's like pulling teeth. They insist on telling me about their fishing story, then about their mom. Then we finally get to the question again, and then they give me this real long answer. And maybe after 15 minutes, I finally get yeah, we can do that. It's the communication styles are vastly different if you're going to try to vertically integrate. And I wonder how much that flows into other businesses that are separate from our industry, where you're talking languages between blue collar, white collar, somewhere in between collar, that sort of thing. That's been a real big epiphany for me. And the podcast host, or the guest that I had on, what he was saying is, he goes, "Oh, you need to grease the wheels." See, the blue collar folks, they want the wheels greased before they let out the information. They are so attuned to like tangibility of things that they have to do that. They're not like machines like us. And you'll lose trust, Lance, is what he told me, if you don't really challenge yourself to start greasing the wheels, because now they're just going to see you as a suit when you're not. Like, you're actually, if you are wading into that industry that's tertiary to architecture building, you can't be seen as a suit. You need to be seen as an ally.
So understanding, understanding how the team members, the contractors, the suppliers that you're working with, what works with them in terms of what's the communication style, but also what are their values. So you mentioned very clear communications from your team, but you also mentioned that the style of that communication didn't get the desired response from, I guess, the contractors and the builders. But once you understand how they communicate, how they need to be addressed, or how they like to be related to, makes that communication so much more efficient. And also it reduces that anxiety, because you know that, hey, when you go and ask them a question, you're not going to get the yes, no answer. So don't expect it.
Exactly. It's going to reduce your own frustration, because you're going into those conversations going, my expectations on how this is going to go are vastly different than the architecture office I just came out of. That's okay. I'm still going to get there. But that, I think that's what's so fun about starting businesses, is just like, it's like addicting. I mean, anybody who says that they're a serial entrepreneur understands that it is one of the most creative things you can do. It's actually not about being this sort of dictator or king that my dad thinks I am. It's no, this is creative. Like, it's super fun. You get to come up with the marketing, how you're going to sell it, all of those sort of things. And then you look forward to the challenges like this, because you go, man, I'm in a cool position. I'm going to just learn. I'm going to become an even better person, both personally and professionally, as long as I step up to these challenges that I've made for myself.
Yeah. Look, I think we've learned so much today. I think, to be honest, personally, I came looking to hear your thoughts on one key topic, but you've given us so much more. And I know you're very eager to share your experience and wisdom with other business owners, which is why you have Inside the Firm podcast, which I encourage our listeners to go and listen to. Check that out. Over 700 episodes. So there's plenty of value there. And they can find that on Inside the Firm podcast, or any podcast platform that you subscribe to. Go and have a look at that, or listen to that. Look, get in touch. Check out some of what Lance has done online, and we'll put the contact details for how you can get in contact with Lance and F9 Productions, and check out what they've been doing, because it's a pretty amazing story. Not just growing one successful business, but growing a series of successful businesses, all vertically integrated, but learning some great skills and lessons along the way. And the thing that we love is you haven't kept that to yourself. You're sharing that with other business owners to help them grow, creating much more opportunity for everybody. Lance, I've really enjoyed today. I've learned a lot. I've got copious notes written down of things that little tweaks that I'm going to do to some of our processes, systems, and expectations. And it's been a real privilege to have you on the Business Behind Your Business podcast. Lance, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Paul. This was a very enjoyable interview. I appreciate your time as well.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions, because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes, or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.